last Friday, the UK Parliament advanced a bill that would legalize assisted suicide. They did so by a 330 to 275 vote. It's kind of amazing. Although that initial approval is just the first hurdle, it obviously is going to take months to actually pass a law like that. But that vote, it's also received a lot of rebuke, not only in the UK, but also here in the United States.
Any society that rejects that truth about life as a gift from our Creator and adopts a culture of death is a society that is in the process of crumbling. So-called assisted death endangers the weak and marginalized in a society, and it corrupts medicine, and it erodes our obligations to family.
A great statement. That was U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson speaking to reporters on Wednesday. And while we, obviously, as Christians, we know well that murder is sin, what does the Bible say specifically about assisted suicide? Well, join me now to discuss this and more in our weekly Worldview segment is Dr. Owen Strachan. He is the Senior Fellow for the Center of Biblical Worldview here at the Family Research Center, a leader in so many different ways, also the author of many books, including The War on Men, which I obviously encourage you to get. But Owen, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's great to be back with you, and an early Merry Christmas to you.
Well, thank you so much, and to you as well. All right, let's start off with the big question here that probably many of our viewers and listeners are eager to hear about. What does the Bible say about assisted suicide?
That's a great question, and the UK bill has really brought that to the fore. Very quickly, the Greek word for euthanasia means good death. And the Greeks had an understanding of suicide, of killing yourself, taking your own life, that involved it potentially being a good death. And the Bible leaves no such room for that. Probably the most prominent example we have of Scripture speaking to this is King Saul, who, seeing the defeat of the Israelite forces, chooses to end his own life, actually implores his armor bearer to kill him, but his armor bearer there in 1 Samuel refuses to do so. And so you have David having to step up and be the king. That's a great example of an instance when a person feels like they should take their own life, which honestly, Jody, people in this fallen world do feel like. There is tremendous pain out there. There are illnesses that are awful. There are terminal conditions that can take a long time to wind their way through a person's body. So we have great compassion as Christians for people in hard situations. But what we have to confess as Christians is that it is the Lord who is the one, Romans 9, who shapes our destiny. And it is the Lord then who determines not only the moment of our birth, but the moment of our death.
Absolutely. I think that is a powerful truth that we need to embrace, because so much of this argument, Owen, comes from the position of compassion, which all of us want to have. But they utilize compassion to destroy life. And I think for us to embrace a biblical understanding of the value of life is an absolute must in this. I wanted to play a quick clip for you and get your reaction. This is from Kim Leadbeater, who is the sponsor of this bill. Play clip 5 for me, please.
Let's be clear. We are not talking about a choice between life or death. We are talking about giving dying people a choice of how to die.
Not talking about life and death. We're talking about how to die. Give me your reaction. I mean, this is still a choice between life and death, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Fact check. That's exactly what it is. It is a choice between life and death. And what it is, Jody, at the broader theological level, philosophical level, is human people like us, again, some of whom are in terrible conditions. Let's be honest. The book of Job gives us a framework for people in terrible conditions. Lepers, went through terrible pain. Their bodies decomposed over time. In the Old Testament, we have a category for that. So we know the book of Leviticus shows us people struggling and suffering, but the book of Leviticus, interestingly, doesn't say to lepers, hey, just cut your throat whenever you feel like it, because this is about you choosing the moment of best death for you. No, lepers are called to look to God, have their sins forgiven, and know that. Here's the broad term theologically, the broad concept. They're not the creator. Only God is the creator. We're just creatures. And part of the reality of being a creature is this: life and death are not in our hands. It's not for us to determine when our life ends. It's up to the creator to decide.
Excellent point. Yeah, I think of this. This is not a new argument. Okay, we recognize this has been going back and forth for a long, long time. In fact, a similar bill like this was defeated probably close to 10 years ago. But nonetheless, do you look at what's going on now in the UK and somehow see this as a shift that is taking place, perhaps similar to what we saw here in the United States on the issue of same-sex marriage? But there appears to be a shift. Is this yet another example of the post-Christian era in which we're living now?
That is completely what it is. If you lose any vestige of a Christian worldview, or even the influences of a Christian worldview, not saying that everybody's a Christian, but if you're losing your grasp on the theology that has informed Great Britain for centuries and America for centuries, broadly speaking, one of the effects is going to be that you are going to think that you are not actually a creature made in God's image, Genesis 1. You're going to think in subtle ways that you're really the creator. You're really your own functional little God. And tragically, in England and beyond, that is the worldview that is now obtaining at the broad level. People are rejecting the view that they are a creature and embracing the idea, even subtly, that they're really the God of their life. They're the one who is in control, and that is not true. And so here's a profound opportunity for witness, Jody, in the UK. Let's just say this to our brothers and sisters there. Stand up and be counted on this issue. Speak up. Speak against bills like this. Don't let it come to pass by the grace of God. And then to any who are in those difficult, let's say, terminal conditions, this is strange advice to give on a Friday evening, but I'm going to say it. You actually have an opportunity to display the glory of God as you handle suffering, not in a creature or self-driven way, but as you embrace God's sovereignty in your life. And you don't end your life, but you entrust your life, even in difficult straits, to God.
Great point. Oh, and if I can switch gears with you, it just seems to be so much in the news right now. But of course, we had here in the U.S. coming back home this week, the Supreme Court, they heard arguments on the case regarding Tennessee's law protecting minors from so-called gender transition procedures. And of course, the legacy media is all over this. They're all over this issue when it comes to young children, and utilizing, again, terms like gender-affirming care and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure you've been keeping up with the hearings and so forth that take place. Give me your take on where this case is going. What do you anticipate?
Well, I've been very encouraged by the reports about certain justices, including Alito, who have been skewering the air quotes logic of the left on this issue. And Alito and others have been asking questions that very much show that overall gender affirming care is not care at all. The way to care for children who are going through what we call gender dysphoria, which is a real psychological condition, is not to affirm an 8-year-old that they are trapped in the wrong body and they need to now go through a chemical castration or a body ravaging surgery. There is real care that needs to be offered those children. Christians are a people of love, gospel care. But the care we need to offer is always care that is in keeping with our sex, whether we are a boy or a girl, according to the body that God has given us. So kids do need compassion. We are not, as Christians, going to be out-compassioned here. As you were talking about rightly a few minutes ago, same issue. And Christians are just smashed with a club of you are not compassionate on both the euthanasia and the transgender issue. And we just have to be a people of moral courage, grounded in the scriptures today, and say on one issue after another, there's others we could mention too. Compassion is exactly why we're saying you must not operate on minors to warp their bodies. You must instead do no harm, as your Hippocratic oath swore you to.
Yeah, and it's such a hypocritical terminology to say gender affirming. I mean, really what they're doing is denying that little child's gender. It is gender denying. If you affirm the gender, you are affirming what they are, a boy or a girl. And it is abusive to deny the reality of their gender and then go the second step with mutilation. I'm just so grateful for the way you are giving instruction here for believers to stand in the gap with all of this. But then there's other terms like non-trans people, the cisgen that we hear a lot talk about these days and so forth as well. It'll take people like you and me. And what is, let me ask you this way, what is to prevent a person who is calling themselves a transgender individual, what is to stop them from saying they are transgendering racially or transgendering to an animal or something along those lines? I mean, why and does this just stop sexually?
There is no line. If you take away the biblical line, that is, there's no line. You can be trans whatever you want to be. I can be, trans Shaquille O'Neal, Owen O'Neal over here, and I can tell everybody that it's morally right for me to be let into the NBA and placed on an NBA team, because though I look 5'7" on my best day, I'm actually 7'2", 300 pounds, and I can shatter backboards with my bare hands. Okay.
Yeah, sounds like me back in my prime too, by the way. I'm 5'6".
So you can tell what I wanted to be when I grew up. So all this to say, Jody, to this specific issue of transgenderism, here's where a lot of Christians get confused. We are fed the idea that there is a distinction between sex and gender. There's a distinction between raw body parts, to speak euphemistically in public, and your perceived gender identity. And those two things can get out of whack, okay? But in reality, your sex, your God-given body, determines your identity. So if you have the body of a boy, you're a boy. If you have the body of a girl, you're a girl. It's that simple. And then the care we offer to kids who are in tough situations, who are, in many cases, from broken homes, let's say, the care we give them is not to say your sex and your gender are distinct, so let's warp that body and find that true self, underneath all the tissue there. No, the care we offer them is to say, your body is not lying to you. You feel like it is. Let's work on embracing your body, seeing the goodness of your body, seeing the creator, answer, spoiler alert here, who gave you the body. And let's recognize, child, that you're just a little creature. You're made in God's image, and God has not done any wrong to you in making you the way you are. And then we lead that child out of that. And by the way, we proclaim the gospel of grace, and we say, your quest to find your true self is not going to come through drugs. It's not going to come through surgery. It's not going to come through being in a support group for others who feel like you. It's going to come through the cross, the shed blood of Jesus Christ. That is where you will find your worth, purpose, and dignity.
So how do you, and we've got less than 2 minutes left, so I hate putting this on you, but how should, I think you've laid it out how Christians should think about this, but how do they approach graciously, compassionately the transgender individual? How do you enter into this situation with someone who's struggling?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you go right to them. You try to be as friendly and compassionate as you can. I would say, if you're in some kind of relationship of friendship, with them, you're building that, then you try to understand their background. You ask good questions. You're not afraid as a Christian, by the way, to listen. Too many Christians are afraid to ask good questions and actually listen. So listen to them. Be curious. Try to figure out why they are where they are as best you can. But then you never go soft on the gospel. You never go soft on the truth. You look them right in the eye when the moment is right, and you say, by the way, you're not in the wrong body. God made us all a man or a woman for his glory. You're just like me. You're a sinner. By the grace of God, you're going to see this truth, and God is going to redeem you like he redeemed me. And that's what you offer to them. You offer them the compassion of loving truth.
That's a Great place for us to end this discussion today. Dr. Owen Strachan, Senior Fellow here at FRC's Center for Biblical Worldview. It's always an honor to have you on the program, and thank you for your willingness and expertise to dive into some of these issues that are very difficult, seemingly, for some people to deal with. We're so led astray by media, and sometimes it gets clouded for believers. Thank you for giving us true north again.
Thank you, friend. Appreciate you.